Hi everybody. Really glad to be here and have everyone who's been working on Kanemitsu and related things for so long come all together, and everyone's writing, pointing out like how powerful all these different projects are and how they're really just supporting each other in these really amazing ways. I first sort of got involved, I guess, during the eviction, like a lot of people here. And similar to Kiana, it was my way back into being in the community after some years away. And from there, I just continued to be in close conversation with Nancy. It was really amazing for me to have, someone in the community who had all these things to say about navigating the art world as a woman of color. And I just sort of got involved in work with the archive to try to support the work that Dorothy was doing and try to, go through it and find some documents that would support some of the, the arguments that she's making in her report. And doing that, I probably made a little bit more of a mess that Kiana had to clean up this past 6 months. So sorry about that. And the more I worked with the archives, the more I realized that there are just so much richness there that it could lead out into so many different things. And I'm a PhD student right now, and I think one of the real catalysts for me to choose this as my dissertation project was this book that Nancy showed me that we're pretty sure the developer paid for, that it's a very fancy coffee table book called 800 Traction Avenue. And it's just filled with photos of the building after they were evicted, but there's still traces of people's lives there. And it's very stylized. And there are 2 essays in it. One's by an architecture scholar, the other's by an urban studies scholar. And basically neither of them mention the artists or the connection to the Japanese American community. They say that they're telling this story before the building changes over to the new owners, honoring those who come before. And it's just this totally bland, aestheticized object that is being put into the world as history. And it really just drove home that, not only are our history books and our art history books shaped by dominant narratives, but space is as well. Our neighborhoods, the way we live, who gets to live there, who gets to make art. And I think that 800 Traction, Kanemitsu, Nancy's work, and then everybody who's invested in engaging with it demonstrates that places like 800 Traction are containers for all these different histories, all these different narratives, all these different desires that really shape the world that we live in and the way that we remember it. And so I'm really working from a cultural studies framework which insists that, art, all other forms of culture is, a result of both the visual form, the aesthetic form, and then also the historical, social, political context. And a lot of people have talked about that today. And because of that, I'm at the very beginning stages of my dissertation, so what it's actually going to look like is still sort of up in the air. But, in my writing so far, I've talked about actually a lot of the people who are sitting in this room right now. I've talked about the testimonies that people gave at City Hall. I've talked about Dorothy's work and the whole process of the historical cultural monument application was just so egregious. And it really is just one really obvious way of seeing the ways that all these different systems make it so that Little Tokyo is continuing to shrink, that people don't know who Kanemitsu is, that Nancy still doesn't have a studio to work in, all these years after the eviction. So I feel really fortunate that I have access to not only the Kanemitsu archive and the knowledge that so many people are bringing into engaging with it, like Jeannie, like Dorothy, like Aya, of course, like Nancy, but that also it's really a product of this community. I'm trained in art history, I'm getting my PhD, but the way that I see the world is so influenced by groups like the Historical Society, by this history of activism, and because of that, I really want to show in this project that 800 Traction, that Japanese American history and identity and art is the result of so many different things that need to be brought together in order to see it. And that includes different immigration histories, different relationships to development, to investment, to other communities of color, other struggles. All of these things are elements that we need to understand 800 Traction, to understand Kanemitsu's work, to understand how Kanemitsu's work circulates or doesn't, is remembered or isn't. So that's the dissertation project, or at least the beginnings of it. And some of you can expect to hear from me as I get into more into the research phase. And then we're also working on a shorter term project that is going to be an exhibition at LA Art Corps. So thank you to Pranay for working with us. And thank you again to the Aratani Foundation for supporting that work. And what that's going to be is sort of focused on Gallery 4, which Nancy and Kanemitsu ran at 800 Traction along with 2 gallerists from Japan. And they showed emerging and established artists from Japan, from LA, from other places in the world or in the country. And I think there's a lot of exciting stories to come out of that as well, because it's just one way that 800 Traction was such a rich place that was really like a hub for all these different exchanges, different flows of culture, of people. And so, the work that Kiana and Jeannie have done with the archive are, really going to facilitate us, seeing who exhibited there, reaching out to some of those artists, getting digital documentation of whatever ephemera is left, and then organizing a show that will show some of the artists. Well, this is all we're still working on what the show is going to be, but some of the artists who exhibited at Gallery 4, and then probably Nancy and Kanemitsu's work as well. So that's, stay tuned for that. And I also just want to say that, working on the Kanemitsu archive pretty quickly makes you realize that it's really difficult to distinguish what's his and what's Nancy's, and Nancy's story is so important to all of this as well. Everything that she's done to maintain the archive, to the things they did together while he was alive, like the gallery. So there are just many, many stories that really need to be told, and it's really happy that all of this is happening right now. So thank you. Okay. Now what? Q&A? Yeah.